When you build something on lies and no ethics and no responsibility, there's accountability. George Santos has no business serving in Congress. On behalf of all the board members and, frankly, the 750,000 residents live in the town of Hempstead, it's time to go. It's time to get out.
Today, an astonishing sight in Nassau County, New York on Long Island, as dozens of local Republican officials and party leaders called on their fellow Republican, freshman Congressman George Santos, who was sworn in just 4 days ago, to resign immediately.
George Santos's campaign last year was a campaign of deceit, lies, and fabrication.
He is a stain on the House of Representatives. He's a stain on the 3rd Congressional District.
He's a national joke. He's an international joke. But this joke's got to go.
Mr. Santos, haven't you done enough harm? It's time for you to resign, George.
Woo! They are not alone, okay? After that, at least 4 fellow freshmen, all Republicans from New York, are calling on George Santos to step down. You see them there. Some of them representing districts that are competitive, that Biden won, and worried about their own reelection. But in spite of all that, the man who actually does have some authority over Santos, Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, says he will still be seating the congressman on committees. And Santos himself says he will not step aside.
I will not.
Will you step down?
I will not. Guys, you got to give us space. A little space here. This way.
The New York Republicans are calling you a disgrace.
Pardon me.
What would embattled members of Congress do without the members-only elevator? While Santos keeps trying to escape reporters in the halls of Congress, the stack of investigations into, and this is the most crucial thing, his very strange campaign finances keep piling up. He's already under local and federal investigation. Today, Talking Points memo reported the FEC sent the Santos campaign over 20 letters, notifying it of issues with its campaign filings. Also noting his filings include line items for what appear to be personal expenses, including meals, clothing, and rent. Multiple meals took place at a D.C. area casino. And there's a staggering amount of fantastical tales George Santos has told through the years, saying he caught a severe early case of COVID, even though he was on TV 4 days later, or claiming to be a, quote, proud American Jew whose parents fled Hitler, even though he's actually Catholic and has no Jewish ancestors as far as we can tell from the records. He said he owned 13 different properties when he's never been a landlord. Or claiming in a resume he gave to local Republican leaders back in 2020 that he worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. He did not. And went to NYU and Baruch College. He doesn't have a college degree. And here's the thing. We found out today. It's my favorite so far. He didn't just claim he went to Baruch. He had a whole made-up story about his glory days in his non-existent time there.
Told me, I remember specifically, I'm into sports a little bit, that he was a star on the Baruch volleyball team and that they won the league championship. And what can I tell you?
I'm joined now by Marissa Kabas, an MSNBC columnist, Long Island native, who has been covering her saga in her newsletter featured The Daily Santos, available at her Substack. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here, Chris.
Well, that was quite a spectacle this morning.
It was something. I mean, it really made Long Island proud.
It was very Long Island. For those who know Long Island, it was like all the accents, all the characters there. What do you think prompted this? Like, I mean, it was really forceful. It was not equivocating. What do you think prompted them coming out the way they did?
I think they're just so embarrassed. I mean, the way this whole thing has unfolded, it's just one bomb after another. And they realized they had to cut their losses. And they were finally just like, we got to get rid of this guy. He is dead weight.
Right, because from their perspective, this is only bad for them, right? Like, he's not involved in local politics. He's in D.C. They look like jokers. And I do think there was some palpable subtext here, which is that they never fielded a particularly strong candidate in that district.
No.
And this, what they view as a con man, swept in to win it, and they didn't do anything.
No, they didn't do their due diligence at all because I don't think they didn't think they had a chance.
Exactly right.
And then
it's embarrassing for them.
Right. And then when the redistricting dropped pretty close to the primary, they were like, oh, my goodness, we might actually have a chance in this district. And so it now included more of Queens and Long Island. And they called on the Queens GOP to be like, oh, do you have a guy? And they said, yeah, sure. Here's this guy Santos. And that's pretty much how it happened.
And in fact, I mean, the sort of micro-geographical story here is like, there's kind of a chip on their shoulder, Long Island, Nassau County, generally about the city. And there was like all this shade they were throwing at the Queens.
Oh, yeah.
The Queens Republican Party. Like, it was the fault of the Queens folks that they didn't do it.
Yes, I mean, there is a bit of tension, and we are kind of two new districts being melded together, and there's a sort of high society. You know, we're better than that in Nassau County. It's a very wealthy area. It's, you know, East Egg and West Egg and the Great Gatsby. That's the district.
So this is all high comedy, and I should note, I want to throw no shade at the proud Baruch College Bearcats, who have a fine volleyball program. In fact, won the 2022 CUNYAC title over Hunter. I looked that up today. So shout out to them, but he did not play for them. The big problem here, though, of course, and I think the Nassau folks know this, is where'd the money come from, right? We still don't know. Like, there's a guy who's making $40,000, $50,000 a year, suddenly makes $1 million a year, loans his campaign $700,000, and weeks into this whole story, we still don't know where that money came from.
Yeah, and that's what initially got me interested in the first place. I mean, it's hilarious and it's entertaining, but I wanted to know how he got so well funded. And so I've been digging into that. And I think something that we're going to keep an eye on is that his treasurer, Nancy Marks, is the same treasurer as Lee Zeldin and many other local campaigns, as well as many other PACs and LLCs. She has about 60 under her name registered to her address. And so she's moving a lot of money around in between these. And it's hard to say if that's the source of the money, but it's definitely something that I'm keeping an eye on.
That's interesting. In fact, Nancy Marks comes up in some other reporting we saw from Talking Points Memo that people in the campaign would say, like, oh, you got to talk to Nancy. Like, she was the one keeping the books, and she is a known entity in this world. Presumably, people are going to want to talk to her.
Exactly. Yeah. I spoke to a candidate in 2020 that had her as a treasurer, and I asked him, how did you even get connected? And he said, oh, someone just said, oh, you want a treasurer? Go to Nancy. She'll take care of you. So
now you've got investigators. Now, the Nassau folks, the other thing that's fascinating is the House freshman Republican class, right? So D'Esposito, who's in an adjacent district, right? Also a Long Island district. He's looking around. He won a Biden district that was like plus 15 or something, right? Like, it was like one of the big upsets of the whole thing.
Yeah.
He understands the incentives here are not, he doesn't want to run in 2024 as like Tweedledee and Tweedledum with George Santos in the district next door.
Exactly. Yeah, he wants to differentiate himself. And I think that being a New York Republican is a weird thing, right? Because they're not used to having any sort of power in this area. And as the district has reddened over the Trump years, they realized we should probably, figure out how to wield our power properly, and they obviously completely stepped on it this time.
So you've got the New York GOP today calling for him, the chair of the New York GOP, 4 freshman members, including the guy in the district next to him in the New York delegation, every Nassau County Republican. But Kevin McCarthy, I mean, I think that what's clear is he's got a narrow majority. He can't afford to lose the vote. He doesn't want to resign, and there's no mechanism to force him to.
Right. And some people are saying, well, he got his vote for the speakership and he got his use out of George Santos, and now he can kind of let him go. But I don't see it happening that easily. I think he's going to have to be dragged out of there by his hair.
Yeah, and I don't think he wants to go. It's also not clear. There's not a good mechanism for expelling him, frankly. We talked about expulsion before. But the other thing that's very clear in the subjects of all this is every day there's a George Santos story is not good for George Santos, not good for the New York Republican Party, not good for the Nassau County GOP, probably not good for Kevin McCarthy. But McCarthy needs that vote so badly that there's nothing to do but hold on for the ride. That's not true of the folks back home who do not want to wake up tomorrow to another George Santos story.
Exactly. And you have these two kind of competing priorities for people. And McCarthy is kind of freaking out because he can't lose that vote. But back home, they want nothing to do with this. He's such an embarrassment. I mean, in the press conference today, they talked about how he pretended to be descendants of a Holocaust survivor and how that was a particularly egregious thing being from this district. I grew up there. To explain to you, when people get bar and bat mitzvahed when they're 12 and 13, every weekend in 7th and 8th grade, I had a bar and bat mitzvah to go to growing up in Jericho, New York. Yeah. And there were 3 the weekend of mine. It was like a drama. Who's going to go to whose? And so that's where George Santos is representing.
Yes, and trying to tell people I'm Jewish and sort of appropriating that. It does not work very well. Marissa Kabas, thank you very much.
Thank you.